What's the most American thing ever that if explained to a non-American might just sound crazy? There is a place a short drive from my house that is a firearms military merchandise store in the front half of the building, and in the back half, just down a short hallway, is a barbecue restaurant. It's a magical place. When I was in Tennessee as an exchange student for a year, I was surprised by the team spirit of each high school. Like how there was a football game every Friday night and almost all of the school was there to cheer them on. That would never happen in my country. Spectating as a high school kid was mainly a way to socialize, meet up, and find out where the parties were. At least when I was in high school, pre-cell phones, that's what we did. No one really watched the actual sport because it's rarely a quality game. Warehouse type grocery stores, Costco, Super Saver. My great uncle from Australia would always take photos, and my Korean, non-Seoul, friends thought this was crazy we'd have so much space for a grocery store. Costco is pretty great. I went to law school there. Fraternities, sororities. Yes, we just join brother sisterhoods when we go off to college with secret rituals and traditions. Fraternities and sororities are also a thing here in the Philippines. It's really controversial though, so many have died from hazing. As a South African, what amazed me was the competitors call each other out in advertisements. I couldn't believe it at first, it seemed so unusual. The first rule of advertising is, if you're on top, you don't acknowledge the competition's existence. But if you're not on top, you highlight your strengths differences from the top company. That's why you'll never see McDonald's talk about a competitor in their commercials, but Burger King and Wendy's do. I remember explaining to an Italian friend that in the US we can vote and own a gun and fight in a war at 18 but can't buy a beer, and he was completely at a loss for words. That's a rather recent development. It used to be 18 was the drinking age up until 1986. As a Brit, what shocked me was learning about just how huge your college sports games are. A university college football, soccer, team game here might draw a crowd of a few hundred. A friend who went to the University of Texas told me their American football stadium seats 100,000. What the actual frick? You would probably be even more surprised at how big high school sports are, especially here in Texas. I think I will use this thread and ask something to you Americans. Are the movie stereotypes of cheerleaders and football players true? Do all schools have a football team with associated cheerleaders? And are the people who join them usually popular kids? I'm only right upstairs in Canada, but I've never even heard of a school that has cheerleaders. Also, what is a homecoming dance? Peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, apparently. I'm Australian and I love them. I'm the only Australian person I've heard of eat them though. I remember eating one for the first time and thought, dang, why aren't these popular? Hospitals buy ad space on billboards. I've never left the country, but we must be the only country that has hospitals advertising like Burger King. Yep, here, NZ, you just go to your nearest hospital. I'm from the NL and honestly I have many questions for the US. Most burning on though is, why are your toilet stall doors so dang high above the ground? I don't know and I'm still not used to it. The worst is the size of the cracks between the door. The amount of times I've made eye contact with someone while sitting on the toilet is more than I'd like. I've visited the US a couple of times. I'm a South African Brit, and the TV adverts are like nothing I've ever experienced anywhere else. The crazy political adverts where they do nothing but insult the opposition. The medicine drug adverts. Good grief, those lists of side effects. It makes the drug sound more dangerous than whatever it's meant to treat. My fiance's favorite though was a petrol advert. Gas, to you guys I guess. It made it sound as if filling your tank with their brand was the ticket to a better life. That advert had American flags everywhere, bald eagles, and the best tagline in the world, buy a tank full of freedom. That was a few years ago and we still joke about going to get a tank full of freedom when we fill up our car. Still weirded out about refills and sizes of drinks specific to soda. The low bar to get a driver's license. Traveling between major cities, the distances are insane, especially just feeling completely alone in the middle of nowhere. Sometimes it's just indescribably marvelous to be driving alone in the middle of nowhere. If my car is in fairly good condition and I am 75 miles from the nearest town, just pull over and stop to enjoy the solitude, even at night if it's clear, to finally be able to see, not just the stars, but the Milky Way too. Health insurance, premiums, deductibles, co-insurance, co-pays, out-of-pocket maximums, in-network, etc. It's an insane amount of knowledge that you need to have to make a good decision about your health coverage. And no one teaches you any of this crap. You have to go and learn it yourself on the internet. The crazy amount of food you guys serve, like the French fries you serve as a side in large glass of Pepsi is enough to fill me up. My girlfriend got a work visa and went to work for the summer in the US. She worked in a restaurant as a waitress, and what made a great impression on her were the huge portions of food that were served on a daily basis to each individual customer. One of my Canadian friends told me that, back in 2003, when we, France, refused to take part in the war against Iraq, some Congress cafeterias and some restaurant in the USA renamed French fries in Freedom Fries. I think it's the most passive-aggressive and American thing you could have done. Plus, fries come from Belgium, not France. Proms and homecoming dances, I don't know if they are one and the same or how many there are. Americans make such a huge deal out of it that pass around awards for whoever is the prettiest dance is the best. The whole thing just seems so bizarre and out of this world to a European that I have to ask if any of you can explain in detail why they are the way that they are. LOL. We just organize with the teachers some school parties that are usually in big clubs once or twice a year, and they turn a blind eye on alcohol because you guys are also really strict on alcohol until you're 21. Another kind odd thing is when you guys are allowed to drink, you just go all over the news in Mediterranean places for causing trouble. I studied in Chicago for a month at 17, and I was so confused as to why all your bread was sweet. I get migraines if I eat too much sugar, and I basically lived off of chips, mac and cheese, and the salad bar in our accommodation. On the 4th of July I just ate a bowl of carrots dipped in ranch dressing as I didn't eat meat at the time. It still had enough sugar to knock me out. Also, your painkiller bottles are huge. I had to buy ibuprofen and the smallest bottle was like 100 pills. I haven't finished it yet, and that trip was 2 years ago. Complimenting strangers. But I like it though. Do you guys in the US get paid holidays? We have weeks of paid holidays, not including the bank holidays. I saw someone saying that in the US they practically work perpetually for their company with no time off. How? I was on a night train in Italy from Rome to Venice. I explained beef jerky and he asked me why we would do that to steak, and I was like, blame the cowboys. To preserve meat during trips that lasted weeks. Not an American, Brit, but when I watch live streaming Premier League on American channels, all legal of course, I honestly find the advertisements so strange. They're so aggressive. I don't know if that's the right word, but honestly it's a fun experience. The car adverts are the best. You should see local ads, they're hilarious. I don't care if someone said it already, I'll repeat it anyway because it's so important. That gap next to the doors in toilet stalls. I don't want eye contact with strangers when doing my thing. I live in a right to hire state. That basically means that, with a few exceptions, my employer can fire me at any time without reason, with zero notice. It is possible to get a job with a contract, but those are rare unless you have a very high paying position. This is quite common in the USA from what a lawyer told me. I've read stories on this site of other places that are not like this. I always thought this was normal before. In Sweden, 3 months notice period both ways is the standard. Both employers and employees like having some time to find a replacement. Mowing the lawn. So, I told my friend in China I had to mow my lawn. She had no idea what it meant. I went on to say, you know, a lawn mower, it cuts the grass. She looked at me like I was crazy. She didn't fully understand until I linked her some videos of folks getting their lawn. Perhaps not the most American thing, but not many people they have gardens or yards to maintain, so she had never seen or used a lawnmower in her life. I was thinking, dang, I had to mow the lawn as part of my chores just about every week growing up. Lawns are common in America because we have the space. I believe the modern idea of a grass lawn started in France as a show of wealth and then migrated to the US. I honestly couldn't believe people had to worry about calling an ambulance because of the fees. Like, WTF. Imagine being seriously hurt or sick and hesitating to call an ambulance and having to think about how much it will cost. Can't imagine it. Imagine being diagnosed with cancer and calculating if it would be better for your spouse and kids if you just died. Someone PLZ explained the imperial system and how TF Fahrenheit works. I would like to not set my house on fire setting my oven to 360 degrees. The way American public schools treat children with disabilities is bizarre. I was fortunate enough to be in district that had a separate section for children who couldn't function well in a traditional classroom. However, the expectations were so low as to be laughable. I had a math class with a great teacher but only me and one other kid attended while everyone else was God knows where. During the last few weeks of that class all we did was watch movies like LOTR. Nobody ever checked in on us or questioned why this was happening. It's a shame really. The kids I met were smart and clever but didn't really get the support they needed. Some just had anxiety and couldn't handle test taking. Others, like me, simply needed a smaller classroom size. 30 kids per class was standard at the time, but under 15 for special ed. All were just filed away under a individualized education plan and never looked into again unless there were big problems. I was split between regular and special ed in my final year of high school. The only accommodation I got for my regular ed classes was a little keyboard LCD screen combo to type on instead of handwriting. I aced them all because, surprise, I don't have a learning disability. I had dysgraphia and autism. After a decade plus spent in public schools, no one had figured it out why I did better or worse. All that was done was to shuffle me, and kids like me, around to be someone else's problem. I saw on a post a while ago that some people in Europe thought the big yellow school buses were our folklore and not real, only in the shows and movies. Sorry kiddo. Run down. Barely functional yellow death traps public transportation as the standard round these parts. Firearms weapons? It's actually starting to become a very touchy subject here in the States. But when I was younger we could go to school with rifles in a gun rack, in the back window of your pickup truck, carrying pocket knives everywhere. Even though it sounds bad or strange, a good sized pocket knife in your pocket can be a helpful tool. In Louisiana, we have drive-through daiquiris, which are basically alcoholic slushies. You can also go into a Walmart and buy alcohol, get your nails done, see an eye doctor, get Subway, and buy a gun, whilst your car is getting its oil changed. Couple that stand out to me as a Canadian who has traveled a lot in the US. At will employment in all states except Montana, meaning an employer does not need to have reason to fire you. Edit, not Minnesota. School starting as early as 7 AM some places. Teacher salaries and how that relates to the county they are in. I've spoke with teachers from both Gainesville and Long Island and the difference was stark. Mat leave being 6 weeks many places, which is insane. What really resonated with me was how poor your poor neighborhoods are compared to the affluent areas. The ceiling certainly seems higher in the US for economic prosperity, but the floor is much lower than Canada. School starting as early as 7 AM some places. I'm a teacher and this one kills me. We have overwhelming research that says students do much better starting 9 AM or later. Yet we keep pushing start times back. It's insane. I always wondered why in the US it's obligatory to tip people like you already got your meal in the restaurant for example and you get the check, you just leave the amount in the check and leave the place. What can they do to stop you from doing that? You already got what you requested, right? Is it a moral thing? Or you will be blacklisted or something like that. At some point in history, restaurants couldn't pay their workers enough and asked the customers for help. They abused this by not paying their workers enough even when the crisis was over. And now here we are with staff not earning enough and bosses placing that responsibility on the customer. Waiters and waitresses are essentially required to tip because their actual wage is very low. In my state they are usually paid $2 an hour. If you don't tip, they'll give you a glare and might even tell their manager. The only reason you shouldn't tip is if their service made you feel worse than you did coming in. When I visited Texas I did these touristy things and learned about sales tax, thought the store owner was trying to rip me off, and learned about tipping. Apparently I was a bad guy not to rip a waiter. My friend made me go back in and find him and tip him. I still don't know how to calculate a tip, and drove a Walmart fat people scooter and took a selfie, and went shooting at a survivalist gun range in the bush. Learned a lot about the Constitution there, and saw guns for sale in the department stores. And you can buy alcohol pretty much anywhere, like in a petrol station or Taco Bell, but you can't drink it anywhere. And jaywalking laws are stupid. And I tackled a robber in a mall, and everyone told me I shouldn't have gotten involved. The security guys that came late thought I was the robber because I had a backpack, but the first guys kept them straight. And in St. Louis I got on a train. Then once it was moving noticed I was the only white guy in my carriage, and the next carriage was all white people. Some guys in my carriage were cool and we chatted a lot, but one guy just stared at me with the stink eye the whole ride. And I got lost in Texas and asked some guy for directions, but he wouldn't say a word. Another guy told me he was a gang member and I was in the wrong part of town and should leave quickly. And I ate giant plates of meat for 15% the price in Australia. And I saw Denny's Bacon-a-Rama, 15-course bacon base meal, including dessert and smoothies. The bacon was deep fried. Whoa. Goddamn. I'm American and I'm amazed at your experiences, lol. Sounds like quite an adventure. 3,000 freshmen in one high school. Background: I went to HS in Texas during the oil boom in the early 1980s. Simultaneously the rest of the country was in a deep recession. Lots of people moved to Houston resulting in a shortage of classroom space. They ended up shoving a tin of freshmen into one school. Found out later that there were just over 3,000 of us. I had a friend from Europe who could not get over the fact that I regularly drive 30+ minutes just to go to dinner. I live in DFW. There are closer things but it isn't unusual to pick a restaurant across town just to try it. Really just the amount of driving in general was shocking to them. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.